Welcome to the Fall to Grace podcast, a show dedicated to those who have stumbled, struggled, failed, and fallen, perhaps more than once. Our message offers encouragement, hope, and connection to turn your personal shame and suffering from a fall to grace. Thank you for joining us. We hope you will enjoy today's episode.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Again, I know it's morning for me. I don't know what time it is for you, but it's early morning for me, so I'm grateful to be here this morning, bright and early, and ready for this next episode of the Fall to Grace podcast. I'm grateful that you're joining me. You know, in my last episode, I addressed several things that are of a very personal nature, from a perspective, my perspective about my personal beliefs and my faith. It is not my intention to impart that as if I have some sort of qualification to discuss religion or doctrine. I share that with you only as a sharing of a principle or a truth that I hold to be important. I'm not trying to convert anyone or convince anyone or persuade anyone to see things the way I see them. This podcast is about a call to action for you in your own circle of influence, within your own belief system, to believe and have hope in something that will be enlightening, inspiring, engaging, and on a path of truth that ultimately will lead to happiness. Because, look, we all want to be happy. Abraham Lincoln famously said that we are as happy as we choose to be, and I believe that to be true. In the previous episode, I mentioned, small little things, small changes, either small errors that can lead to great and unwelcome and consequential outcomes, or those great and daily small steps, small changes that can be made that can lead you to being happy. And happiness is really the reason we're here, is to enjoy our life, to bring joy and happiness to others. And today's episode is about that. What has brought me joy? What has put me on that path? What has brought me enlightenment and encouragement and inspiration to keep going when that path got dark and difficult? And it's okay that it's dark and difficult. Just continue and keep pressing on. And I believe that you will find what you're seeking. But you have to continue on the path using correct principles and truth and light. And that's my opinion, and I'm trying to share that with each of you. Now, in my experience, especially early on, it was very difficult for me to grasp onto something that I could practice, or I didn't feel like I could practice my own faith, and there's a lot of reasons for that, which I will probably address in further episodes. But I have addressed it briefly in previous episodes, so you'll understand. If you have followed along, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I no longer really had a association with my church. I was excommunicated, and I needed to sort of practice my faith on my own, so to speak. I didn't feel comfortable going because I was so ashamed of myself. Now, I'm not in that place now. I'm talking about early on when I was really struggling with having lost my identity and my name and the shame of it, the stigma of it. It was all very difficult, and I don't need to rehash that. But in order for me to move forward, I needed to put into practice some things, not just one thing, some actions and some process and I needed to establish some new habits that would allow me to move forward. And so I searched lots of things. I mean, I continued to read the Bible and the LDS scriptures, the Book of Mormon, etc. Those were important for me because as I have said before, that was my foundational faith, and I wasn't going to set that aside. I needed to get back. I needed to course correct. I needed to go on that path and walk that path as if I were still fully engaged in the church. That so-called covenantal path, even though I couldn't do it in the mainstream of the way the church does it. And that's just the way it was for me. But each day I needed to make those choices and those decisions that would get me back to where I wanted to go. And I've made those choices over an extended period of time now, and they've made all the difference. But in the meantime, I was looking for things that were inspiring, things that were, for me, needful to kind of grasp, hold on to. Now, I want to go back with just one thought from my previous episode and add to it just a bit. Look, we have all made mistakes, and we're all somewhere along this path of life, leading to what we hope to be the most desirable outcome of joy and happiness here and in the life to come. But some of us are battered and broken, as I have been and was. Let me read you a little poem that I think might, I hope, offer some inspiration and also a little bit of entertainment. Some of you may, as soon as I start reading this poem, will recognize this poem right away. For some of you, that might be brand new. The name of the poem is The Old Violin. 'Twas battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it hardly worth his while to waste his time on the old violin, but he held it up with a smile. "What am I bid, good people?" he cried. "Who starts the bidding for me? $1, $1, did I hear two? $2, who makes it three? $3 once, $3 twice, going for three, but no." From the back of the room, a gray-bearded man came forward and picked up the bow. Then, wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening up the strings, he played a melody pure and sweet as the angel sings. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What am I now bid for this old violin?" as he held it aloft with its bow. 1,000, 1,000, do I hear two? 2,000, who makes it three? 3,000 once, 3,000 twice, going and gone, said he. The audience cheered, but some of them cried, "We just don't understand." "What changed its worth?" Swift came the reply, "The touch of the master's hand." And many a man with life out of tune, all battered and bruised with hardship, is auctioned cheap to a thoughtless crowd, much like that old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He is going once, he is going twice, he is going and almost gone. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of a soul and the change what is wrought by the touch of the master's hand. Luckily for me, and I know for each of you, the touch of the master's hand can make all the difference. And that's what I hope from the previous episode and episodes to come, that the message is, we're all battered, we're all bruised, we're all broken. We've all made mistakes. We've all been lost on the path of life in small ways or big ways. But those small ways need to be corrected. The big ways need to be corrected. It takes effort, determination, consistency, and all of those things. But yet, still holding out his hand to touch our lives is the master. And I hope that we'll take his hand. Now, how do we do it? How can we do it on a daily basis when it seems difficult? You don't have to be Christian or to be a believer to understand the point I'm trying to make. As I was searching for how to best conduct my life going forward, I did start studying other philosophies, religions, beliefs, faiths. I wanted to make sure that whatever direction I was going was the direction I really wanted to go. And I had been aware of course, and I was somewhat familiar with the general ideas of Buddhism. But what's interesting is, as I studied a little bit about Buddhism, I discovered a couple of things that I thought were very important. And that is, the basic principles of Buddhism. And again, I'm not an apologist for Buddhism either. I'm not qualified or worthy to discuss it in detail. But I find it interesting that the Buddhist perspective is that life is suffering, and that suffering is caused by attachment to things like desire, anger, ignorance. Now, that's where the rubber meets the road for me. That's what I'm talking about. You can be addicted to lots of things, and a lot of those destructive and addictive things are obvious and visible and public. I mean, a drunk in public is it's obvious to see that this person is struggling with something, and maybe the alcohol is only masking the greater something. But those somethings often reside in a desire for something that's not right, or an anger that cannot be quelled, or an ignorance that cannot or will not or is unwilling to be eradicated. Attachment causes suffering, and attachment ends by letting go. So letting go of the things that are holding us down, those remarkably stupid things that Jordan Peterson talks about, as I mentioned in my previous episode. And what I found interesting about Buddhism is that the Noble Eightfold Path included some insights that for me were applicable no matter what the faith is. Now, Buddhism doesn't claim to necessarily be a religion. It claims to be a way of thinking and being that will make you a better Christian or a better Jew or a better Muslim or a better whatever it is you already are. A better human being. Really, that's the bottom line, right? We don't all have to be in the exact same boat to be helpful and encouraging and inspiring and engaging with each other. But I think the Noble Eightfold Path is interesting. And I just want to touch upon it just briefly before I get to another point that I want to make. The Noble Eightfold Path is having the right view, which is seeing the world as it really is. That ties directly to something that I already believe, and that is that the Spirit of the Lord and the light of Christ will teach us things as they really have been, as they really are, and as they really will be. Our right resolve, a determination to act with intention. Right speech is to communicate clearly, mean what you say and say what you mean, and be honest. Right conduct, having good habits and actions. Right livelihood, which is having a joy in purposeful employment or engagement or passion or vision. Having right effort, which includes commitment. A right mindfulness, about being present in the moment. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in detail. And right practice, which is a union of learning and absorbing what we're learning and then being undistracted and committed to those things. Obviously, I didn't follow the Noble Eightfold Path in my life. I made every possible mistake. But the way to get back on that path in the eyes of Buddhism, and I think all these things are correct and true. I found these to be very enlightening and very inspiring. I grasped onto those because it was something I could practice on the daily without necessarily practicing my religion formally, which I was no longer really able to do. So these were important to me. And one of the things that struck me very profoundly was right mindfulness. As I have mentioned in a previous episode, I met and was receiving therapy from a woman named Jessica Sanchez in Palm Desert at her practice known as the Refinery. And she turned me on to, as I've mentioned before, the idea of listening to and being inspired by guided meditations. And in those guided meditations, I established 4 intentions that I would then follow for the rest of my life. And I want to talk about those a little bit more in detail. It's about being present, and it's about creating a present every day that can then lead to a near and distant future, however you want it to, truly want it to be. It seems easy, and it seems to make perfect sense, and it seems to just be so natural. Yet, we find ourselves being pulled by the siren song of the world. You know, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the guy was jokingly saying that, you know, I have a cell phone. We all have cell phones. And what's interesting about this is the one thing that is the least use of this phone is to use it as a phone. We use it for lots of things that have nothing to do with it being a phone. We text, we surf the web, we spend endless amounts of time, you know, surfing, scouring, scanning, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. We spend an inordinate amount of time on this device. And what's interesting is, for all the miracle that it is, its use of a phone is its most often used operation. I find that fascinating, but it is true. Okay. As I was working with Jessica, and she turned me on to guided meditations, and as I discovered the guided meditation on the setting of intentions, as I've mentioned, the 4 intentions that I established for myself are the following. I am grateful, I'm humble, I will remember the good, and I will maintain a heart full of love. So gratitude, humility, remembering the good, and love. Those are my 4 foundational intentions that have led me on the path that I'm on now. And I believe that I'm on a good and happy and healthy and reliable path that will eventually lead me to where I want to go. And I want to talk a little bit more about those 4 intentions and why they're important. Now, behind me, up on the wall, is a painting that I purchased of a chair. And I discovered that painting because I happen to be, I follow my son-in-law and my daughter on Instagram because I like to find out what's going on in their business and what's going on with their kids, etc. Well, one day I was traveling to work and I noticed that on my son-in-law's page, there was a live feed of his sister, who was an artist who was having sort of a live viral opening of her art gallery in Iowa. And my son-in-law was, you know, videotaping this walkthrough, and I happened to notice this painting on the wall, and it struck me like a lightning bolt when I saw that. Because for the longest time, I felt that I had no place at the table. And when I saw that chair, it was very emotional for me. I thought, that's my life. I have no place at the table. I'm no longer welcome at the table. I'm no longer welcome at the table of my church or some of my family or some of my friends. I'm no longer welcome at the table of my career, my profession, the list goes on and on. That empty chair was so emotionally bittersweet for me to see that. But at the same moment, I knew I wanted to have it in my home. And so through the live feed, I asked how much for the painting, and I was given a price, and I agreed to the price, and I purchased it, and then it was sent to me. And that empty chair was a very, very bittersweet image for me. But I have found and I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to mention it in just a bit, I have found that it has a different meaning that I would like for you to observe when I'm done talking about these 4 intentions. You know, the first intention that I established for myself was that no matter what, and these intentions are the no matter what's in my life. No matter what, I was going to be grateful. It didn't matter what dark stuff came. It didn't matter what hostility might have come. It didn't matter what difficulty or challenge I had to face. I am grateful. I'm grateful to be alive, to have the chance to move forward, to enjoy the beauties of the earth. I'm grateful to be able to associate with my family members who still welcome me into their homes and into their lives. My children, my grandchildren, those that will come and give me a hug and will express their love and their concern and their compassion for me. That has fed my soul. I'm grateful to have a job. I'm grateful to have work to go to so that my day has a purpose to it. I'm grateful for the touch of the Master's hand that has transformed me from the battered, I should say, is transforming me. The job is not done. That has transformed me in part from a battered and broken and unwanted instrument to something that can play a beautiful piece of music, so to speak. I'm grateful that I can practice humility. You know, they say that the opposite of humility is pride. And one of the quotes that I love about that is, and I'm not going to be able to pull it up as quickly as I would like to, but let me see if I can find it real quick. Pride is, here, this is a quote from C.S. Lewis. Pride gets no pleasure out of having something. It's only out of having more of it than the next man. You know, there have been many that have taught the sermon that, you know, pride comes before the fall, and pride is definitely the opposite of humility. Pride is only concerned about being right, not about what is right. And my sharing of these right views and right conduct from Buddhism made sense to me, because they are the things that are right. It's not about me being right. It's about what is right. Another thing that I would like to share very quickly is a quote from a Book of Mormon prophet by the name of King Benjamin. And King Benjamin taught a very, very powerful message. And sometimes it's difficult to hear this, but again, this is about what is right and what is true. All of us have weakness. All of us are the natural man, so-called. And in the Book of Mormon, it says that the natural man is an enemy to God and has been and will be forever, unless that person yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit. Now, we all have a conscience. We all have the light of Christ. We all have that voice in our head that says, you know, maybe you shouldn't go there. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should repent of that. Maybe you should say you're sorry. Maybe you should humble yourself. Because the qualities that will then turn us back on the path that we need to be on is as we follow, and as we follow the enticings of the Spirit and that voice that will lead us to goodness and truth, will lead us to become as a child, submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, and be willing to submit to all things which the Lord seeth fit to inflict upon us. It is through, as I said in the previous episode, it is through the grace and the atoning sacrifice of our Savior, and it is through following that voice, that Spirit that leads us to be submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love. And those are the qualities that I wanted to establish as my foundation going forward: gratitude and humility. Another foundational intention for me, of course, was to remember good, the good. My life hasn't all been bad. My life has not been strewn with daily mistakes and sins and errors and heartache. There has been so much good. I know that I've done good. I know that I've treated people well. I know that I've taught truth and I've been honest. My life was not a complete and utter ruin. every single day. Yes, I made serious mistakes and I made serious errors, but I can still remember the good times, the happy times, raising my children when I was back in school, in elementary school, my friends, high school, which I loved, going to university, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I can remember when I was happiest, and I can remember when I showed someone else love and care, and I can feel good about myself if I remember the good. We can't just beat ourselves down and beat ourselves up. We are our worst enemies. Maybe we should be the, leading actor in the story of our own life. Be the hero. Remember that there have been times when you were the hero and you were good and you did good and you treated others with kindness and consideration. And all of those things come from a place of love. I determined that no matter what was said to me, what was done to me, what consequence I had to follow, no matter what hurtful thing may have come my way, I was going to maintain and keep a heart that is open to love. I can do that by remembering the loves that I have and the love that I have for my friends. Now, here's the challenge. Do you love your enemy? Is it possible to love your enemy? The answer is love. It is possible. It can be done. If I can do it, we all can do it. And it is through that love that we can reach out to others and engage them in an inspiring and enthusiastic life and getting back on the path that will lead to the happiness that we all seek. I am grateful that you've been with me today, and I'm grateful for the time you've spent watching or listening to this podcast. I'm grateful for every opportunity I have to share my perspective, and hopefully my message will be inspiring or engaging or enlightening to someone along the way. And a call to action is for all of us to reach out to those who are struggling, who may have stumbled and who may have fallen, and who are trying to find their way back on the path of happiness. And I hope you'll share this with those who may need this encouragement. Thank you for joining me today on the Fall to Grace podcast, and we'll see you next time.